Absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head by identifying Didi as very different from Ant when we thought this was about controlling anti-monopoly behavior at home in China. What we've learned from Didi is that the Chinese are very concerned about national security and data, so much so that the Chinese are IPO process. Now they're up to 12 agencies that can weigh in on one of these IPOs and yellow flag or red flag this, slow it down, or halt it completely. And I think the greatest risk to investors right now is just the uncertainty. We have no idea what's going to come out of the back end of this Didi investigation, but whatever comes out will actually set the precedent because this is the first of its kind. So I think the risk right now is just uncertainty. We have no idea what this is going to look like. And while I do think some of these IPOs will get done, they will come to the U.S. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be seamless. We're in for a bumpy ride.
Yeah, it's interesting, Clete, because historically the reason a lot of Chinese companies came to the U.S. is because the investor pool, the capital availability here in the U.S. was seen as second to none globally. And so you could come here, you could maybe get a higher valuation. You may have had to have some sort of unique structure to be able to list over here, but it got done and investors traded accordingly. Now there's this ever-present threat of the possibility of delisting. You've got companies doing secondary listings. There are certain issues as it pertains to auditors, and the U.S. is really clamping down on the ability for the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, the PCAOB, to ensure that financials are up to snuff for the Chinese companies who are listing here. How big of a threat is that to the ongoing conversations, or lack thereof, to a certain extent, between these two nations? Is the delisting threat and the kind of siphoning off certain companies and giving them incentives to list in Hong Kong or in China going to be a major sticking point here?
I think it will be a major issue for years to come. And I really have to confess that when I look at the issue of Chinese companies listing in the United States, I really think it's just a matter of time before that's no longer an option. And the core issue you have here that's led to this conversation has been that Chinese government rules have not allowed for U.S. regulators to look at the books and records, look at the audits of Chinese companies that are listed on U.S. exchanges. And China is using the exact same national security arguments that they're using about data and IPOs to say we can't let U.S. regulators get access to any of this data and any of this information about these companies. And so I really don't see any way that China backs down. And on the U.S. side, I mean, this is a law from Congress. And so it's really hard to see the U.S. backing down. And so I think these issues are coming to a head, and it's really only a matter of time before those companies have to look elsewhere. And I think these latest moves by China really signal that China is preparing for that. And they're basically saying, OK, come back home, come back to Hong Kong and list. And that's where, we're not going to put the same regulatory requirements on you as we would if you want to list in the United States. So unfortunately, I think that's the trajectory we're on.
Yeah, just this week we saw Li Auto with a secondary listing abroad in Hong Kong as well. Do I understand you correctly, Clete? You do not believe that Chinese companies will be able to list in the U.S.? What about the $2 trillion in market cap of Chinese companies that are already listed in the U.S.? I mean, this would be a major, major change. And how soon are you talking about that change taking place?
Well, the law that Congress passed says by 2024, if this issue is not resolved, then those companies will need to be delisted. And there has been some hope that the U.S. and Chinese regulators can get together and come up with some sort of agreement that would allow for U.S. regulators to have access to that information that would prevent this from happening. But my point is those conversations have not been going well. China has been basically saying we're not going to allow this to happen for national security reasons. And if that's the case, I don't see how the U.S. backs down. Again, it is, we still have a couple of years to go, but the body language, the signals we're seeing right now are very, very negative, in my opinion.
Dordrecht, quickly, do you agree with Clete here? Do you think that this is just never going to get resolved?
Actually, I do believe that on the tech sector side of things, we are heading likely for this sort of balkanization. But I would actually put a fast break between the tech sector and some of the other companies that may be looking to IPO here in the U.S. But I do share some of those same gloomy predictions about the tech sector eventually, and we are likely heading towards a balkanization. That's unfortunate, but likely true, yes.
Wow.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.